Rebecca Hale was an island of calm in the chaotic sea of American Airlines Flight 1138. Dressed in a simple pair of worn blue jeans and a nondescript navy blue hoodie, she looked like any other traveler, deeply engrossed in her paperback novel. But when the sleek, menacing shapes of F-22 Raptor fighter jets materialized just beyond the wingtips and the captain's voice, trembling with an unusual emotion, announced a formal military salute for the woman occupying seat 17B, the cabin's collective consciousness shifted. Every passenger turned, realizing the quiet woman who had offered her pretzels to the child in the row behind her was not just a fellow traveler, but a figure of legend, a true American war hero. Before you hear her full story, let us know in the comments where you're tuning in from. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more incredible stories like this one. Rebecca Hale navigated the bustling concourse of Chicago's O'Hare International Airport on a brisk autumn Wednesday. Her dark brown hair was pulled back into a simple, functional knot at the nape of her neck. A scuffed leather backpack, clearly having seen more than its share of journeys, was slung over one shoulder. There was an efficiency to her movements, a quiet purpose that allowed her to glide through the throngs of people without ever seeming rushed or stressed. Nothing about her appearance would make you look twice. The terminal was a symphony of modern travel's organized chaos. Brokers in sharp suits barked into their cell phones, closing deals mid-stride. Weary families juggled strollers, oversized suitcases, and the constant demands of young children. A group of students, likely on a school trip, were sprawled near a gate, their laptops and chargers creating a nest of cables. No one, not a single soul, gave a second glance to Rebecca Hale. She was just another anonymous face in the crowd, perhaps a consultant, heading to Seattle for a week of meetings, which was precisely the truth. She located Gate K-12, where her flight to Seattle was already in the final stages of boarding. The massive Boeing 757 sat majestically on the tarmac, its white and blue livery gleaming under the afternoon sun. Baggage handlers worked with practiced speed. There are small carts zipping around the aircraft's underbelly like worker bees around a queen. Rebecca presented her digital boarding pass to the gate agent, a cheerful man with a neatly trimmed mustache. "Have a great flight, Miss Hale," he chirped, his eyes already focused on the next passenger in line. Rebecca offered a small, polite nod and made her way down the jet bridge. Inside the cabin, flight attendants offered warm greetings as passengers shuffled to find their seats. Rebecca returned their smiles but remained quiet, her preference for solitude a deeply ingrained habit from years of high-stakes work. Her assigned seat was 17B, a window seat nestled behind the wing. The aisle seat was occupied by a man in his late 40s, impeccably dressed in a charcoal gray suit. His silvering hair was perfectly coiffed, and he was furiously tapping out an email on a high-end tablet, his fingers flying across the screen. His briefcase, made of polished mahogany leather, looked like it cost more than a round-trip ticket to Europe. He radiated an aura of corporate importance. "Afternoon," the man said without looking up from his screen as Rebecca settled in. "David Keller, hope you don't mind. Just have to get this proposal sent before we lose signal. The joys of fourth quarter, sales pushes. Am I right?" He finally looked up and extended a manicured hand. Rebecca shook it briefly. "Becca, nice to meet you." She immediately retrieved a well-worn copy of a historical fiction novel from her backpack, a silent but clear signal that she wasn't looking for conversation. The title, The Gates of Fire, was hidden by her hand. But David Keller was clearly an extrovert, energized by human interaction. "So, Becca, what brings you to Seattle? Business or pleasure? Let me guess." "Software engineer. Everyone heading to Seattle is in tech. I'm in medical device sales myself. Been with the same company for 2 decades. It's a rewarding field. We're literally saving lives with our pacemakers and surgical robots." Before Rebecca could formulate a polite, non-committal response, A frail elderly woman paused at their showed situ, clutching her boarding pass with a trembling hand. She had kind, watery blue eyes and a cloud of white hair. She wore a hand-knitted cardigan over a floral dress and exuded a palpable aura of anxiety. "Oh dear, excuse me," she said, her voice thin and ready. "I believe I'm in 17C, the middle seat. I'm Eleanor Parsons. This is my first time flying in nearly 20 years. My husband, he always handled everything. He passed last winter, and I'm flying to meet my first great-grandson. I must admit my nerves are getting the better of me." Rebecca's entire demeanor shifted in an instant. The reserved, almost aloof traveler vanished, replaced by a woman of immense warmth and compassion. "Of course, Mrs. Parsons, I'm Becca, and this is David. Please have a seat and get comfortable. I completely understand being nervous, but I can promise you you're in the safest hands possible. These pilots have thousands of hours of training, and these planes undergo more safety inspections than you could possibly imagine." Eleanor gratefully lowered herself into the middle seat, her hands still shaking. "You seem to know an awful lot about this, dear." "Are you a pilot?" she asked, her voice filled with a hopeful curiosity. Rebecca offered a gentle smile. "I've spent a significant amount of time in and around aircraft over the years, more than most. And from all that experience, I can tell you that commercial air travel is statistically the safest way to travel. These Boeing 777s are incredible machines, absolute workhorses of the sky." David Keller leaned forward, his interest piqued. "See, I knew it. See, some kind of technical expertise. An aerospace engineer? Maybe that would explain the calm demeanor and the detailed knowledge. You must work for Boeing or one of their competitors." "Something like that," Rebecca replied, her answer intentionally vague, as she turned her gaze out the window. The ground crew was disconnecting the jet bridge, their movements a familiar ballet of efficiency. The massive engines began to wind to life. What David and Eleanor couldn't possibly know was that they were sitting next to Colonel Rebecca Hale, United States Air Force, retired. Her military call sign was Wraith, a name spoken with a mixture of awe and reverence in the tight-knit community of fighter pilots. She had flown over 300 combat sorties in the F-15 Strike Eagle over the rugged mountains of Afghanistan and the deserts of Iraq. She was credited with 5 confirmed air-to-air kills, making her one of the few female aces in modern history. She had protected countless ground troops with her uncanny ability to deliver precision munitions under intense enemy fire. But Wraith's most legendary moment came on a moonless night over a hostile valley in Afghanistan 5 years prior. A special forces team had been ambushed, pinned down, and was about to be overrun. Their pilot, Major Evans, had been shot down trying to provide air support. His F-16 went down in flames, deep in enemy territory. Disobeying direct orders to hold her position for a larger rescue package, Rebecca, flying her Strike Eagle, descended into the valley alone. For 90 agonizing minutes, she flew dangerously low, weaving through a storm of anti-aircraft fire, using her cannons and bombs to systematically eliminate enemy positions. She guided a rescue helicopter to Major Evans's crash site while simultaneously fending off 2 enemy fighters that had been scrambled to intercept her. She single-handedly saved the entire Special Forces team and Major Evans her own aircraft riddled with bullet holes by the time she limped back to Bagram Airfield. For that singular act of heroism, she was awarded the Air Force Cross, the Silver Star, and a Purple Heart for shrapnel wounds she sustained during the mission. The incident, known unofficially as the Wraith's Stand, was now required study at the Air Force Academy. Yet here she was in seat 17B, looking like just another passenger. She'd retired from the Air Force a year ago and was now trying to acclimate to the quieter rhythms of civilian life, using her unparalleled expertise as a consultant for advanced avionics and targeting systems. The trip to Seattle was to debrief a team of engineers on a new guidance system for military drones. The plane completed its taxi and held short of the runway. Rebecca instinctively scanned the sky, noting the wind speed and direction from the windsock, a habit forged from thousands of takeoffs that she couldn't break. The 777's powerful engines roared to a crescendo, pressing the passengers back into their seats as it thundered down the runway. As they ascended through a thick blanket of clouds into the dazzling sunlight above, David resumed his friendly interrogation. "You know, Becca, these guidance systems you work on are fascinating. The future is all autonomous, isn't it? Drones, self-flying planes. That's where the real money is. You must be with a big defense contractor, right?" "Rathon Lockheed." Rebecca watched the sprawling grid of Chicago shrink into a map below. "I primarily work with military-grade navigation and sensor fusion systems. The technology is a few generations ahead of what you find in the civilian sector." She realized she might be revealing too much and added, "for applications in commercial aviation safety." Of course, Eleanor had been clutching the armrest during takeoff, her eyes squeezed shut. Rebecca noticed and placed a reassuring hand on her arm. "The most dynamic part is over, Eleanor. We'll be at our cruising altitude in a few minutes, and then it will feel as smooth as driving on a new highway. Would it help if I explained some of the noises you're hearing? Sometimes knowing what's happening makes it less intimidating." "Oh, that would be a blessing, dear," Eleanor said, her voice filled with relief. Rebecca calmly explained the thought of the landing gear retracting into the fuselage, the subtle shift in engine pitch as the pilots reduced power for the climb, and the whirring sound of the flaps being adjusted. Her explanations were so clear and confident that even David listened intently. "You're a natural teacher," David remarked, genuinely impressed. "You really should consider a career as a commercial pilot. With your knowledge base, you'd be a shoo-in at any of the major airlines here," he said, pulling out a business card. "I have a few contacts in airline management. If you ever want to change, give me a call." "Thank you, but I'm content where I am," Rebecca said, a faint smile playing on her lips. The irony was immense. She had more hours in high-performance jets than most senior airline captains, but explaining that would shatter the anonymity she cherished. Far above them, at $45,000 feet, 2 F-22 Raptors began their patrol. Captain Jake Viper Sullivan and Major Maria Strike Ramirez were part of the Air Force's elite, entrusted with flying the most advanced aerial combat machine ever created, the Raptor. A masterpiece of stealth technology and aerodynamic engineering, was a ghost in the sky capable of dominating any airspace. Viper and Strike were a seasoned pair, veterans of several overseas deployments. They were the best of the best, but even they spoke in hushed tones about the legends who had come before them, pilots whose names were etched into Air Force history. Control. "This is Viper 1 requesting clearance to proceed along patrol corridor. Delta Niner Viper radio to Scott Air Force Base. Viper 1, you are cleared." The controller's voice crackled back. "Be advised, we are on elevated alert today. Credible intelligence suggests a potential threat against civilian air traffic along the Chicago-Seattle corridor. Your mission is to provide overwatch and be prepared to intercept and assist as required." In the cockpit of the second Raptor, Strike completed her systems check. "What's the chatter on the threat, Viper?" she asked over their encrypted channel. "Vague," he replied. "Could be a domestic threat. Could be a foreign actor testing our response times. Standard procedure, stay sharp, weapons hot, and assume everything is a threat until proven otherwise." The two F-22s accelerated their engines, leaving shimmering trails in the thin cold air as they climbed to their patrol altitude far above the commercial flight paths. From their godlike perch, they could see for hundreds of miles in every direction. Back on American 1138, the cabin had settled into the familiar rhythm of a long flight. Beverage service was underway, and the scent of coffee filled the air. Rebecca had managed to delve back into her novel, though David's occasional comments kept pulling her out of the story. "You know, Rebecca, you have this incredibly calm presence," David observed, studying her profile. "It's like nothing in the world could faze you. In my line of work, you learn to read people, and you have the unmistakable look of someone who's operated under extreme pressure." Eleanor nodded enthusiastically. "I thought so too, dear. When I was so frightened, you didn't just offer empty platitudes, you explained things. You knew. There's a confidence about you that's very reassuring." Rebecca simply smiled, adept at deflecting such personal observations. The military had drilled into her the principle of operational security: never volunteer information. As the captain's voice came over the intercom for a routine update on their flight path and expected arrival time, Rebecca glanced out the window and her body went rigid. Two tiny metallic glints were streaking across the deep blue of the upper atmosphere, moving with a speed and agility that no commercial airliner could ever achieve. Her pilot's eye instantly identified the distinctive angular silhouette of F-22 Raptors. She knew military fighters never shadowed commercial routes unless there was a significant problem. Her expression remained a placid mask, but her mind was racing, cycling through a dozen threat scenarios: hijacking, bomb threat, a national security incident. Her training kicked in, her situational awareness expanding to encompass the entire cabin. She subconsciously noted the locations of the exits, the demeanor of the flight attendants, and the behavior of her fellow passengers. "See something interesting?" David asked, following her gaze. "Just some spectacular clouds." "It's a beautiful view from up here," she replied, her voice steady. But inside, every nerve was on high alert. F-22s meant the situation was as serious as it gets. Above them, Viper and Strike received an urgent directive. 8 Viper Flight Command needs you to establish a visual link with American Airlines Flight 1138, a Boeing 77M, en route from O'Hare to SeaTac. We are executing enhanced security protocols and require you to verify their flight plan and passenger manifest. Strike acknowledged and expertly guided her Raptor to a position several miles from the airliner, well out of sight of most passengers, but close enough for their advanced sensors. "American 1138, this is United States Air Force Viper 2, please. Respond on guard frequency 403. In the cockpit of the 77, Captain Miller and his first officer exchanged worried looks. In his 30 years of flying, Miller had never been hailed by a fighter jet on a domestic route. "Viper 2, this is American 1138. We read you 5VEG5. "Go ahead," Miller responded, his professional calm masking his deep concern. "American 1138, per National Security Directive, you are to immediately transmit your full passenger manifest to Air Traffic Control for verification. Please comply without delay." The pilots wasted no time sending the passenger list via their data link system to the control center. In the cabin, a few passengers noticed the slightly strained tone in the captain's subsequent announcement about minor turbulence, but most remained oblivious. Rebecca, however, knew this was anything but routine. At the Chicago Air Route Traffic Control Center, a senior controller named Frank stared at his screen, his mouth agape. The manifest for AA-1138 had cross-referenced with a topple security database, and one name had set off a cascade of alerts. "Supervisor, you need to get over here now," Frank yelled. "We've got a passenger on American 1138 with a Tier 1 military designation. Hail, Rebecca. Seat 17B. Call sign, Wraith." The supervisor rushed over, his eyes widening as he read the security file that had automatically populated on the screen. "Wraith? Are you kidding me? Get me a direct line to Scott Air Force Base Command now." The supervisor grabbed the red phone that connected directly to the military. "This is Chicago Center. We have a positive ID on Colonel Rebecca Hale. Call sign, Wraith aboard American Flight 1138, requesting immediate confirmation and instructions." The response from the military was swift and decisive. "Stand by, Chicago. We are routing this to the Pentagon." Within moments, the news had traveled up the chain of command to the highest echelons of the Air Force. Wraith wasn't just a decorated pilot, she was a living legend, an icon whose actions had become modern military folklore. Back in the Raptors, Viper and Strike received the astonishing update, Viper Flight be advised. We have confirmed the identity of a high-priority friendly asset aboard AA 11138. Colonel Rebecca Hale, call sign Wraith, is a passenger on that flight. A profound silence filled the cockpits of both fighters for several long seconds. Finally, Strike's voice came over the radio filled with disbelief and reverence. Command. Repeat that last. Did you say Wraith? The Wraith. Affirmative. Strike. Colonel Rebecca Hale. Are you familiar with her service record? Viper's response was immediate and emotional. Command. Every fighter pilot in the Air Force is familiar with Wraith. She's the reason I fly the F-15. Her stand over that valley in Afghanistan, it's the gold standard of courage and airmanship, Strike added, her own voice thick with emotion. Wraith held off 6 enemy fighters while guiding a wounded chopper. Out of a hot LZ, she refused to leave until every last soldier was safe. The stories they tell about her at the academy, they're not just lessons, they're inspiration. Command confirmed everything they knew, and more. Colonel Hale is the recipient of the Air Force Cross, 2 Silver Stars, and the Distinguished Flying Cross. She retired last year after 22 years of exemplary service. She is traveling in a personal capacity and is not related to the security alert, which has since been resolved. Stand down from alert status. What are our orders regarding Colonel Hale Command? Viper asked. Maintain a protective escort for American 1138 until they are out of our sector. Furthermore, the Pentagon has authorized a ceremonial recognition salute at your discretion. Both pilots were momentarily speechless. A recognition salute was in honor of the highest order, a gesture reserved for presidents, fallen heroes, and the most revered military figures. That the Pentagon had authorized it for a retired pilot traveling as a civilian spoke volumes about the esteem in which Rebecca Wraith Hale was held. Viper keyed his mic, his voice resolute. Command. It would be the single greatest honor of our careers to render a salute to Wraith. She is a giant. She paved the way for so many of us. On board American 1138, Captain Miller received instructions that left him utterly astounded. American 1138, be advised, your military escort is requesting permission to perform a flyby recognition salute for one of your passengers. Colonel Rebecca Hale, call sign Wraith, is on your aircraft. She is one of the most decorated combat aviators of her generation. The first officer's jaw dropped. Wraith is on our plane. Captain, I did my training at the Air Force Academy. They teach. Her mission's in tactics class. She's a living legend. Miller was equally stunned. A military salute for a passenger in 30 years. I've never seen or heard of anything like this. This woman must be the real deal. Captain, the first officer said, she's more than the real deal. She's the pilot other pilots tell stories about. Captain Miller knew this was an unprecedented moment. He picked up the cabin microphone, his hand unsteady. Ladies and gentlemen, your captain speaking. I have a rather extraordinary announcement. In a moment, our military escort will be performing a recognition salute. This is an extremely rare honor reserved for individuals of the highest distinction. It is for a passenger on our flight today, Colonel Rebecca Hale, a decorated war hero, whose incredible service to our nation has earned her the profound respect of the United States Air Force. A wave of murmurs swept through the cabin as everyone began craning their necks, trying to identify the hero in their midst. Rebecca felt a hot flush of embarrassment creep up her neck as hundreds of pairs of eyes began to scan the rows. Eleanor looked at her, her own eyes wide with a dawning realization. "Becca, my dear, are you Colonel Hale?" Her voice was a whisper of awe. David Keller stared at Rebecca, his mouth hanging open in utter disbelief. "You're a colonel. You're Wraith. But you said you worked on navigation systems." Rebecca's face was beet red. "I do. High-performance military aircraft have exceptionally complex navigation "And targeting systems," she said quietly, her voice barely audible. A flight attendant hurried to their row, her expression one of pure excitement. "Ma'am, are you really Colonel Wraith, the hero of the Kandahar extraction?" Rebecca gave a reluctant nod. "That was my call sign." "Yes, but I'm retired. I'm just a regular person now." The cabin fell silent as the full weight of the situation settled in. This unassuming woman in a hoodie, who had patiently calmed a nervous elderly passenger and politely endured a businessman's incessant questions, was one of America's most celebrated modern warriors. Eleanor reached out and squeezed Rebecca's hand tightly. "My dear child, what on earth did you do to earn such an honor?" Her voice filled with a grandmotherly mix of pride and concern. Rebecca took a deep breath, realizing she could no longer deflect. "I flew the F-15 Strike Eagle for 22 years. I served in Iraq and Afghanistan, mostly providing close air support for our troops on the ground." A young man in a military-style haircut from a few rows up called out, "Is it true you have 5 air-to-air kills?" Other passengers leaned in, eager to hear her response. "I was in situations where I had to defend myself and my wingman," Rebecca said simply, ever humble. "But no pilot achieves anything alone. It's always a team effort from the mechanics who keep the jets flying to the controllers who guide you home." David was still processing the revelation. "But you're so normal. You were reading a book, for crying out loud. I was boring you with stories about medical devices, and you were a war hero the whole time?" "That's the idea," Rebecca said with a faint smile. "When we take off the uniform, we're just people. We have families, we read books, and we fly coach." Outside the windows, the 2 F-22 Raptors had moved into a breathtakingly close formation with the airliner. Passengers scrambled for their phones, pressing them against the glass to capture the incredible sight. The fighters were so close, you could see the pilots in their helmets giving a sharp salute. Captain Miller's voice returned. "Ladies and gentlemen, if you'll direct your attention out the windows on both sides of the aircraft, you're about to witness something truly special." Rebecca sat, frozen in her seat, overwhelmed by the attention. "This is really not necessary," she murmured to Eleanor. "I was just doing my job." "Nonsense, dear," Eleanor said sternly. "You let these fine young men and women honor you. You've clearly earned it." Passengers started to approach her row. A young woman who looked to be in college said, "Ma'am, my brother is a Marine. Thank you for watching over guys like him." An older man wearing a Navy veteran cap slowly made his way down the aisle. "Colonel, I served on a carrier in the Gulf. I know what it takes. It's an honor to fly with you." Children asked for her autograph on napkins, and Rebecca, with genuine warmth, obliged every single one, taking the time to ask their names and what they wanted to be when they grew up. In the cockpits of the F-22s, Viper and Strike prepared for the salute with solemn pride. "Strike, this is without a doubt the most important mission we will ever fly that doesn't involve firing a weapon," Viper said. "Wraith is the embodiment of everything we strive to be." "Agreed, Viper," Strike replied. Her courage saved dozens of lives. She defined what it means to never leave a man behind. It's an honor just to share the same sky with her. The radio crackled on the airliner's emergency frequency, patched through to the cabin speakers by the captain. "Wraith, this is Viper. On behalf of a grateful Air Force, this salute is for you. Your courage, your sacrifice, and your leadership have inspired us all. Thank you for showing us the way." Strike's voice followed. "Colonel Hale, you are a legend. Thank you for your service." With perfect synchronization, the 2 F-22s executed a slow, graceful aileron roll, a stunning display of aerial skill and military respect. Then, igniting their afterburners, they pulled up sharply and climbed into the heavens, disappearing from view. The cabin erupted in thunderous applause. Rebecca watched them go, tears finally streaming down her face, a silent acknowledgement of the profound bond she shared with those who serve. It wasn't a salute for her, she realized, but for the uniform she once wore and the sacrifices of everyone she had ever served alongside. The rest of the flight was transformed. The flight attendants offered to move her to first class, but Rebecca politely declined, choosing to stay with Eleanor, who now held her hand for the rest of the journey. When they landed in Seattle, Rebecca was the last one off the plane, having shaken every hand, posed for every photo, and listened to every story from her fellow passengers. As she walked through the SeaTac terminal, she once again looked like any other traveler in a hoodie and jeans. But for the 200 souls on Flight 1138, she would forever be the quiet woman in Seat 17B, the living embodiment of a hero who walks among us. Her greatness hidden not by stealth technology, but by a profound and unwavering humility. The story of the salute to the Wraith became an aviation legend, a powerful reminder that the greatest heroes are often those who seek no recognition, content to have served their country with honor before quietly returning to a life among the people they swore to protect.